I'm joined by Troy Stovall, the CEO of TEDCO. We are in the midst of enjoying a great partnership with TEDCO. How are you, Troy? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate you and everything that you do for the community and getting the messages out and the storytelling. And I'm blessed and favored, so thank you for asking.
Absolutely. We have enjoyed having so many of the folks from TEDCO joining us. So it's nice knowing that as we kick off this new year of our partnership, we start with the CEO. We'll start at the top and go from there.
Well, I appreciate that.
Well, I want to ask you exactly, what is Cultivate Maryland?
Yeah. So, for folks that don't know me, I'm an engineer and computer scientist by training. But yeah, I love Doc, the etymology or the history of words, and the word. And if you look at the word cultivate, its Latin roots are about tilling and preparing, and that's what cultivate is about. How do we begin to till the soil or the assets that we have here? How do we begin to prepare them and plant them and nurture them and water them and give them the nutrients so they bloom and grow? And so cultivate is our effort to look at how do we prepare and bring together these assets in the state. And so the little bit of history, if I may, I'm actually sitting here talking to you from Annapolis, with the whole budget situation. And so a couple of sessions ago, TEDCO got asked to go and find out why we don't have the economic growth that we should have, in particular on tech-based economic development, and why aren't more people of color and women participating in part of that. And we did the study, and it's on our website. And what we came back, and it was, I'm sure, no surprise, is that people of color and women, if we keep going at the pace we're going at, it's going to take us, in some cases, centuries to get to some type of equivalency from a population point of view in certain sectors. It's going to take us decades to get to equivalency in terms of ownership of businesses. And so there's this gap. But it also came back and said, as the governor has been saying, is that our economic growth has very much lagged the country. We should be closer. The average should be at 4%. Our number said 1.3%. The average is 4%, and best in class is 6%. And so we're nowhere near that. And if we just made up that difference, those 3 percentage points differences, the types of jobs, there would be over $900,000 jobs that could be created, and many of those jobs would be paying $80,000 to $90,000, and they wouldn't require a 4-year degree, and they could be in places across the state that could cater to people of color, women, and to our rural communities. And so through that study, we were able to launch what we call the Equitech Growth Fund through the support of the legislators. The Equitech Growth Fund is going to provide us $5 million a year at this point now for the next 8 years. And we just had, Doc, our expo, our development and marketing officer, who I'm sure you know, Tammy Thomas, led that effort, is extremely successful. And at our expo, we announced the awarding of our Equitech Growth Fund. We anticipated 30 to 40 applications. We got 75 for almost $32 million. And we were looking for these applications because the whole point of Equitech and Cultivate, as I said, about tilling soil, was to bring people together. And so part of what we were looking for was we needed applications to show us they were coming together. So if you were in Western Maryland, we want you come together with somebody from Central Maryland. If you were a predominantly white institution, we want you to come together with an HBCU.
So part of this is about just establishing these partnerships across the state.
So, young lady, I use the word stitching because that's just me. I got these words. I use stitching, and you got to stitch in your scale. And so, because I talk in alliterations, that's just me. I grew up around a bunch of Baptist ministers, and so that's how I chat.
Well, you're talking to a PK over here, so I get it.
So we got a stitch and scale, so you get it. And so we were looking for that stitching. We were also looking for the ability, because we weren't given a lot of money. We ended up awarding $7 million. So you had to show up with some money. You didn't have to have a match. You had to show with at least a quarter in your pocket. You have to at least have a quarter in your pocket. And on top of that, not just that quarter, but you have to show us that you had sustainability. We didn't want to provide something, and in 2 years you're going to be dead. And so those were the three things. And so we had 75 applications. We actually had 20 really outstanding applications, but we only had money for 14, and we ended up awarding 14 for $7 million. And if you look at, and we were awarding those opportunities back to cultivating, we were preparing the soil, we were tilling the soil, we were watering the soil, we were
Okay.
seeding the soil around workforce development and infrastructure. And that's what we awarded around. And so, for instance, around workforce, and I'll close on this, the awards that we awarded were eventually going to help create over 200,000 job opportunities for job creation in the state of Maryland. That's the type of scale we're talking about for just $7 million.
Wow. Now, let me ask you
That's
this.
tilling. That's
And
tilling soil.
no, it is. And I'm glad you, I mean, I love that you're speaking in alliteration. I definitely appreciate that. When we look at the types of businesses that are eligible for this with the 75 applications, I know it wasn't from individuals. What type of businesses are eligible for this type of participation in the Equitech grant?
Thank you for asking. So we plan on doing it again in the spring. We learned a lot, and so we're going to actually have some workshops for the ecosystem to learn what we learned, and we're going to do another RFA in the spring. But to answer your question, any for-profit or nonprofit, so you look at the entities that actually won, they were both a series of for-profit and nonprofit. A good example was one that I went and spoke at, was a for-profit, Early Charm Ventures, which is there in Baltimore. They partnered with Coppin State and they were leveraging funds that they had received from the Department on some clean energy work that they were doing. And so you had this for-profit called Electron Ventures partnering with Coppin State University and HBCU there in Baltimore, and they came together for this opportunity, and they were one of our awardees.
Okay, I love that. Let me talk about just some long-term goals, because now
Yes,
that
ma'am.
we've got this kicked off, you've learned some lessons from the last time you did it. You're planning to roll it out again in the spring. But what are the long-term goals for this initiative, and how do you think it's going to impact the entrepreneurial community?
I'll start with your second question. The point of all this, back to cultivating, right? And I know I'm probably maybe taking my analogy too far, but the goal of Equitech is to till that soil so that those things sprout, so they're available. So the spaces, the infrastructure is available for entrepreneurs, whether that's a wet lab, whether that's a manufacturing facility, whether that's a computer lab. It's ready and available for our entrepreneurs when they need it. And at the end of the day, you don't do anything without people. And so the workforce development side is an entrepreneur needs to have talent. And so the whole point of Equitech is not to do a direct investments in companies like we do on our venture investment side, but to invest in our ecosystem so that the entrepreneurs have a place to go to or the people to hire. And
Okay.
that's what this, so when I tell you that we're training these people or we're creating facilities or we're creating manufacturing, that's what this is about. This is about creating is that Maryland entrepreneurs and innovators have places to go to get the stuff done and the people to hire to make it happen.
Now, once you actually roll out your plan, I'm talking about the individual companies now. They make those connections, the stitching, as you call it, feeding and planting into the soil. I definitely appreciate that. At what point does the funding from this particular grant end and the expectations that the company will be able to go forward from there?
Yeah. So again, through the support of the state and the governor, we have another 8 years
Wow,
of
okay.
Equitech. This is a long-term commitment. I think it's one of the few times I've been involved with state entities for a long time that there's a commitment of multiple years, $5 million, and I should add we get that's we appreciate the state support. But we also realize we can go get other resources. So we are actively going after resources from the federal and philanthropic and corporate resources to supplement and complement and build upon those dollars that the state has given to us. But I think the long-term metric at the end of the day, I'm not walking away from job creation. That's an important metric.
Right.
But I think an extremely important metric for us at TEDCO is two other metrics to answer your question. Are we bringing capital to the state that
Right.
but for would not come to the state? That's point one. And point two is, and it's kind of two-edged sword. Are we keeping talent in the state that would have thought about leaving, and are we bringing talent into the state that would not have considered?
Right.
And so that's the point, right? And so look, I tell people all the time, we don't need to compare ourselves to Silicon Valley, nor do I want us to become another Silicon Valley. I want us to become the best Maryland.
I like
I want
that.
to become us to become the best Maryland, and I want people to say when they're thinking about innovation, when they're thinking about entrepreneurship, I want them to say Maryland. I want us to be in that top. When they say Silicon Valley or Austin or New York or Massachusetts, we're in that same, not just the same paragraph, we're in the same sentence.
Oh, I would
That's
love
the goal.
that. I would love
That's
that.
the
So
goal.
we're talking big dreams here that TEDCO has, because you're talking about growing not just people's expectations of what Marylanders can do and what you can participate in coming to Maryland, but growing this field in Maryland as well.
Well, Dr. K, this conversation you're having, what you do is part of that. I mean, part of what I think one of our challenges, we don't storytell enough. We don't put our brand out there enough, and we gotta tell the story of Maryland. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today, and so we need to do more of this. We gotta tell the story of the successes of Maryland, the successes of what's here, and what's the possibility of. And so you and what you do, and again, thank you for what you do. But that's what we got to do more of. Because look, I lived in Silicon Valley. I lived in Texas. I know
Okay.
Austin. I've lived in Boston, so I know these ecosystems pretty well. I've lived in them, and they have some great bones. Don't get me wrong, and we have those same bones. But what they've done a great job is creating a brand. And got to remember what brands do. Brands, when you hear a marketing commercial on TV or radio, brands, that marketing message makes you do two things. It either creates a something in your brain that says, I need to do something different,
Right.
or it creates an emotional reaction, one or both. We've got to create either an emotional reaction or a decision about Maryland and our ecosystem. That's what we got, and that's what you're helping us do.
I really appreciate that. Troy Stovall, the CEO of TEDCO. Folks, we're kicking off our 2025 partnership with him. We look forward to getting more information and having more of the folks from TEDCO so we can story tell about what we're doing together. Thank you
There
so
you go.
much.
Appreciate you. Be well.
Absolutely.
Be blessed.